The journey from good to great, a tale of transformation. In a bustling town, nestled amidst rolling hills and sparkling rivers, there were a handful of companies that were well established but seemed to hum along at a steady pace. These companies weren't failing, but they weren't thriving either. They were just good. People were comfortable with the status quo. The owners, managers, and employees worked diligently, but no one ever talked about greatness. The idea of achieving something beyond the ordinary was a distant dream, something other companies might aim for, but not here, not with them. But there was a group of people who believed otherwise. They weren't content to let things simply be good. Jim Collins and his team, a group of determined researchers, arrived in the town with a challenge. Could these businesses, and any business, achieve greatness? Could they go beyond just surviving and rise to the peak of excellence? Jim had always been curious about success, but not the ordinary kind. He wanted to know about companies that didn't just coast along. He wanted to discover how some companies made the leap from good to great and why others didn't. To answer this question, he and his team set off on an epic journey, studying a handful of companies that had managed to make this leap and sustain their success over the long haul. After 5 years of research, analyzing 1,435 companies and narrowing them down to 11 that had made an extraordinary leap, Jim and his team were ready to share their findings. These companies weren't just successful for a few years. They had sustained their greatness for decades. Jim knew the answers weren't simple. There was no magic formula. But after much work, he realized the first and most important discovery: the power of humility and will. The first breakthrough in their research came when they focused on the leaders of these great companies. The common thread among them wasn't charisma or magnetic personalities. No, the leaders were remarkably humble, quiet, and often behind the scenes. These were not the flashy, larger-than-life leaders who lived for the spotlight. These were leaders who possessed what Collins called Level 5 leadership. Level 5 leaders were the quiet giants of their organizations. They led with fierce determination, but they did so without seeking personal glory. These leaders weren't interested in credit. They didn't care about the applause. They cared about one thing: making the company great. Darwin Smith, the CEO of Kimberly-Clark, was the perfect example of this. When Darwin took over, Kimberly-Clark was just another paper company. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't innovative, but under his leadership, it transformed into a major player in the consumer product world. What made Darwin exceptional wasn't his ambition or his cleverness. It was a profound humility and his sheer determination to put the company above his own ego. He made bold decisions, like pulling out of the lumber business to focus entirely on consumer products. Decisions that looked risky to the outside world, but they were grounded in his understanding of what Kimberly-Clark could become, not just in the short term, but for the long haul. Level 5 leadership was not about being the smartest or the most charismatic. It was about quiet resolve, and it set the tone for everything that followed. The right people make all the difference. The next piece of the puzzle Collins and his team uncovered was a surprising one. Great companies didn't start with a brilliant strategy or a perfect product. They started by getting the right people on board. The common wisdom was always that you needed a brilliant vision, but these great companies focused on getting the right people on the bus before they decided which direction to go. In one particular case, a company struggled for years because they kept trying to force a vision onto a team that wasn't aligned with the mission. But once they focused on bringing in people who were passionate, talented, and aligned with the company's values, everything changed. The what of the company could then emerge from the who. The leaders knew that having the right people meant they could trust them to figure out the right path. They weren't worried about finding the exact solution up front. They just knew they had the right team that could adapt and grow with the company. As one company executive put it, "We didn't have to get the what right away. We just had to make sure we had the who right." Honesty is a key. In the pursuit of greatness, there's a critical step that many leaders skip: confronting the brutal facts. Every great company faced adversity. They faced failures. They faced market changes and economic downturns. But they didn't hide from it. They confronted the brutal facts of the situation, no matter how painful. This idea was embodied in the story of Circuit City, a company that had made an incredible leap to greatness in the 1980s but had begun to slip in the 1990s. The company's leadership was faced with a hard truth. They were losing their edge. But instead of ignoring the problems or covering them up, they dug deep and took a long, hard look at what had gone wrong. They didn't sugarcoat it. They didn't pretend that everything was fine. They confronted the truth head-on. This brutal honesty and willingness to make painful decisions, like firing underperforming leaders or cutting back on failing product lines, enabled them to stay on the path to greatness, even when things seemed bleak. And when the company failed to keep up with the changing landscape in the years that followed, it was a reminder that those who confront the brutal facts can adjust, but those who shy away from them are bound to fall behind. The hedgehog concept. Focus on what you do best. Another central discovery was the hedgehog concept, an idea that came from the ancient Greek parable of the hedgehog and the fox. The fox is clever, always coming up with new tricks, but the hedgehog knows one big thing: how to roll into a ball and protect itself from predators. The great companies Collins and his team discovered were like hedgehogs. They didn't try to do everything. They focused on one thing, the thing they could do better than anyone else. It was the intersection of three crucial questions. What can we be the best at in the world? What are we deeply passionate about? What drives our economic engine? Great companies found the intersection of these three circles and built everything around that core focus. For one company, it wasn't about chasing every technological trend. It was about focusing on their core values and leveraging their unique strengths to achieve something extraordinary. Do what you do best, relentlessly. The next principle was a powerful one, a culture discipline. These companies weren't merely disciplined in their operations. They had instilled a deep, unwavering discipline across every level of their organization. Discipline wasn't about rigid control. It was about having the right people in place, giving them freedom within a framework, and trusting them to take responsibility. In these companies, employees didn't wait for orders. They didn't second-guess decisions. They had the confidence to make the right calls because they were all moving toward the same goal. Discipline in thought, in action, and in people is the glue that held it all together. Technology didn't drive greatness, but it accelerated it. Great companies didn't adopt technology for the sake of it. They used it to enhance what they already did best. When Walgreens decided to use technology to enhance its pharmacy services, they didn't just jump into every tech trend. Instead, they strategically used technology to provide more value to their customers and make their operations more efficient. Technology wasn't a savior. It was a tool that supported the company's growth without overshadowing their core values and principles. The doom loop. Finally, Collins identified a pattern he called the flywheel. Companies that succeeded did so through consistent, incremental effort, slowly building momentum. The process was like pushing a massive flywheel. At first, it's hard and progress seems slow, but with every turn, it gains momentum. On the other hand, the companies that failed were caught in the doom loop, a never-ending cycle of bad decisions, quick fixes, and wasted energy. They might have experienced short bursts of success, but they never sustained it. The great companies focused on consistent, disciplined effort, which, over time, propelled them to greatness. The legacy of good to great. As Jim Collins wrapped up his research, he realized that greatness wasn't a rare, once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. It was a series of decisions made with clarity and discipline that could be replicated. The good companies didn't need a magic formula or secret shortcut. They needed to focus on the right people, the right culture, and a relentless pursuit of what they could do best. Jim's team had discovered the recipe for greatness, and it wasn't a one-time event. It was a journey, built day by day, decision by decision, towards something extraordinary. And it was a journey that anyone, any company, could embark on. So the question is no longer, can you make the leap from good to great? The real question is, what will you do with the lessons you've learned?